The book, The Human Demi-Gods, clearly draws on deep first-hand experience. Sumanth has spent over 3 decades decoding influence, visibility, and perception, long before the term influencer became part of our vocabulary. Says Ashwin Sanghi, one of India's leading best-selling author. Thank you, Ashwin, for such a deep endorsement. I'm really humbled. To all the listeners who don't want to go through the entire prelude and want to dive into the book immediately, the book provides you with the entire spectrum of the influencer eco space, how it panned out historically, the pre-digital era and the post-digital era. I would like to only add here that the book also contains a certain degree of advisory in a very plain format, which, if adapted with commitment, can also make you a powerful influencer. Certain of the tools are also being suggested here, what you need to look at, and I strongly feel that if you follow the advisory, there is a very, very strong probability that you would establish your influence either as a working professional or maybe as an entrepreneur or merely as an aspiring influencer. Happy reading. The rest of listeners can continue to hear out the entire prelude. The intention of this audio file was to engage with the readers and provide them a first-hand insight into what went behind the book, how my journey panned out in terms of taking this book forward, what went into the writing process and the publishing process. Because I feel that as a book enthusiast, there is an author out there who is reading my book, or rather I will say that there is an author in the making. Any one of the readers, obviously considering his level of enthusiasm for reading, is also a future author. So from that perspective, I think one definitely would be keen in getting an insight into how the author's mind works, what is the creative process in terms of content development and taking the narrative forward, what is the level of energy which gets infused in a book journey, what are the tasks, what are the inputs, what is the process of those inputs to be put together. I'm just going to basically touch upon certain aspects, what I experienced while writing this book. I put in more than 3 decades in the business of marketing, communications, PR, journalism. Throughout the last 3 decades, I have been writing about brands. I have been advising brands on their marketing strategy, on their image management strategy, on their reputation management strategy. This simply means that the core foundation of the marketing, public relations, image management is all about portrayal of a certain image amongst the target audience or in the marketplace. Now, hereby, in terms of my passion for content curation, a book was always building up. I think a book was always building up right from the time I moved out of my college. But for some reason or the other, I was not really able to sit down and write a book. While I was engaged in a lot of writing material, more of business correspondence or communication related to my actual brand advisory task. So 2024, the last year, the second half is sometime around that phase. I really made up my mind that I need to do a book, as I was set to explode with a lot of my own personal experience, which I've kind of garnered over the last 3 decades. Then also in terms of my learnings coming in from a lot of clients, a lot of human beings with whom I have traversed this journey. Now, why I picked up the topic of the book as a Human Demi-Gods is the first thing which struck me, the advent of the social media, especially in the last 5 to 6 years context, more during the post-COVID phase. Threw up this term, all of a sudden, the word influencer became a buzzword, especially amongst the younger audience. Now, when somebody like me who has traversed the path right through my 90s, turn of the century, millennium, who has experienced the ecosystem of the pre-digital era, and the one who has traversed across the post-digital phase, it came to my mind that let me relook at the influencer ecosystem in a manner whereby to the common man brings home a point, brings home information, brings home a narrative whereby he gets an entire kaleidoscope of the influencer space, right from its origin, in terms of its impact, what happened in the pre-digital era, how it panned out in the post-digital era, and especially now that we are seeing the advent of AI also. The buzzword is all about social media, followers, analytics, algorithms. The term influencer, as acknowledged by the younger generation, I wanted to kind of define this term influencer beyond what is it perceived to be. In short, look at the various facets of the ecosystem of an influencer. Also bring out the elements such as how influencing has been an art and science right from the historic periods. We had a lot of personalities who were some of the biggest influencers. Interestingly, during a conversation, I remember quite some time ago, somebody asked me, Sumanth, who is the biggest Indian influencer? And probably he was expecting me to name somebody with a very, very strong following and somebody who's very popular in today's context. And I told him instantly that in my mind, the biggest Indian influencer to acquire the largest following was Mahatma Gandhi. He did it in the era where technology was still absent, the social media was not in vogue, and a lot of communication tools were yet to be discovered. Because if you look at the real influence generated by people about whom we have read in the books, we are aware about, right from major political personalities, major corporate personalities, and major sports people, and also people hailing from other segments. When you look at leaders like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, I mean, all those personalities who have led a major revolution during their times and transformed the societies, whereby we are blessed to have a sense of civilization, which is coming in from the efforts or the influence exercised by a certain group of people in the past to have taken it to a threshold whereby we are rid of a lot of ills of the society, vis-a-vis compared to the past. And the biggest factor what comes to my mind is obviously the slavery. The journey behind the book, as I said, it began in 2024. The actual process of getting down to brass tacks, making up my mind that I need to do this. My initial process was to collate quite a bit of data, because I realized that while my style of writing is absolutely extempore, but considering that this book is going to be falling in the non-fiction category and a semi-academic kind of a scenario, I didn't want to make this book a slow read or a dull read, being perceived as something really academic in nature. I wanted to throw up the ecosystem of influencer, or rather create the narrative around it, which also can be put across in a very engaging manner with a lot of interesting citations, and also parallelly putting across my perspective on the subject matter. So obviously the journey began with a lot of data collation. I was helped out by two of my team members there, who carried out the research. I would say that the more data they threw my way, or the more data they sourced, the structure of the book became much clearer in my mind. Finally, I think it took me roughly about 45 days to write this book. And then maybe I reworked on it a bit for another 15-20 days. But yes, it has been a 6-month journey. And then it moved on to the publisher's hand, whereby again, about 2 to 3 weeks were taken up in terms of rebooting the book. Having said that, I will also like to say thank you to Devendra Tak, one of the co-authors with Rashmi Bansal for We Are the Champions, for also putting in kind words, as I had already shared my manuscript in advance with Devendra Tak. Coming to the philosophy part of it, or the crux of the book, what I probably had in mind was, why is the word influence not being looked upon as an entire elephant? While when we only look at the social media influencers, I think we are putting out a very truncated definition of influencer. We need to look at it, the entire kaleidoscope of the term influencer. And that's the reason I said, let me, kind of take the audience back in time, how the influence originated. And the my definition of originating is how actually de facto people were exercising influence in the society and how it impacted the societies as such. So in a non-tech era or a non-social media era, you see, I always say that even in the pre-digital era, there were influencers. Only the cameras was missing and the algorithms were missing. Because if we have seen, even during our lifetimes, the influences did play out a very important part, carrying a movement forward or carrying a brand forward, carrying an image forward, maybe on behalf of somebody. We particularly saw the corporates figuring that particular part out and influencing their audiences via various marketing tools. I looked at it from a perspective that there is something called online influence, which we are very familiar with when it comes down to the social media. But nobody talks too much about the offline influence. So that's the reason I basically have dedicated certain portion of the content in the book on the front of online influencer architecture and the offline influencer architecture, whereby I have, from my perspective, provided a roadmap how to go about this journey. People also need to understand that there are a substantial volume of human beings who are nothing short of major influencers in the offline space. Maybe they're not popular in the social media space, but in terms of even leadership in various verticals, in the corporates, a lot of working professionals, people with various skill sets, they carry a lot of influence and they're impacting a massive following. I think the only difference is that perhaps you don't hear too much about them. But from a community perspective, they are impacting policies and they are also managing to create what I term it as a strong personal brand for themselves. There is a lot which I have talked about influence in the context of creating a personal brand. What is the essence of creating a personal brand? How significant it would be in terms of impacting somebody's business or somebody's work career. We have seen that a lot of working professionals and entrepreneurs have managed to rise with a shorter gestation periods just because they managed to create a personal brand, a robust personal brand. And that is what I have been advising in my book. Every one of you should aspire to become a robust personal brand. It is essential in today's context, especially in the competitive world. Now, in this book, you're going to be seeing a lot of current generation influencers, and I have divided them into various zones. I've also looked at a fact that what is it that makes somebody an influencer? What are the basic personality traits? Where do you need to deploy your energies in case you want to embark on this journey? In this book also, I have highlighted that anybody can become an influencer, especially in today's context. One of the strongest reasons for that is the technology aspect. The advent of technology, as it keeps getting more and more robust, has enabled even the common man to dream or aspire of becoming an influencer, which otherwise I would say was a very, very elite functionality itself, or a very elite aspiration in the pre-digital era. You only heard about people who have achieved major milestones from various walks of life. With the technology enabling the delivery mechanism for any of your expression, an influencer today can easily acclimatize himself or herself to the technology, has access to tools, should be aware about how to go about the whole journey, can definitely start creating an impact and turn out to be a big influencer or a major influencer. As I said, the word influencer basically is reflective of both online and the offline space. Every working professional today should think from a perspective of at least building certain degree of influence, because that is what is going to carry that particular professional in his career journey with a much faster, or provide acceleration to his career journey. To sum it up, I have tried to create a narrative which is engaging in nature. There is a lot of information, a lot of data. I've also quoted very well-known personalities, how they look at influencer ecosystem. Maybe some of you will feel that the book should have had more depth or gone on. Maybe I will look at it in my next book. Once again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you who cared to hear this audio file out and obviously managed to put your finger on the book. I'm absolutely in gratitude of all my readers, and I definitely look forward to creating a further level of engagement with the readers in some form or the other. Happy reading.